Following the harvest, the moon was still a strange sight at 11 a.m. setting in the west, quite a large chunk missing from its battered orb. Also, there was the sun well risen in the east, seeming to balance the moon as its echo. The trio made their way through a lonely upland, wild and still, where October's last zephyrs whispered at will as they prayed for the souls of the dead. Towards evening, on a November's day, the first quarter moon rose very early, sitting atop the evening star, but then rose later and later each day, drawing away from Venus and thereby adding light to its own face. The second summer was brief this year, and some weeks passed. The now chill winds hastened the approach to the nearest inn, as the threesome looked at the rising omen of winter in the very late night sky.
Orion, king of the bejeweled winter sky, backbone of our nights, wield your sword above our heads, but please never below.
There, in the road ahead, a huge yellow beast, dead ahead and growing larger by the second. Right in front of their eyes did it lie. It was, of course, the moon.
I think that the November frost moon is even more impressive than that of the harvest. It is so colorful and intimidating.
The moon rose straight into a thunderhead as an old lady opened the door of the inn.
Tit for tat,
She said as she farted at the thunder. "We'll need lodging for 3 travelers weary at the thought of the fast approaching winter," said the 3 in unison, and in tune at that. There was a cheerful blaze of wood fire in the stone fireplace, and a snug bar where red-flowered linen and polished brass warmed the room's oak paneling. Glorious views of the Woodchester Valley and the silvery River Severn were as close as the nearest window. Some Celts insisted on buying them drinks so as to hear the tales of the wood. The wars of the centuries had been ever so kind to the inn. The bedrooms were well furnished, many with 4 posters. For dinner, there was the game of the season: Scotch salmon, wild duck, hare, venison, and partridge. Evenings were always fine and warm at the inn, a much-needed respite from frostbite. The whole of the inn shone with loving care. Bowls of nuts with nutcrackers handy were placed casually on tables in the living room. The walls were decked with weapons and hunting horns of copper and brass. The next day was as sunny as the nights were chilly, and much to their surprise, all 3 travelers were to be found in the garden where tea was served, next to a joyous outside bar with traditional red carpet, even diamond-paned windows, timbered ceilings, and a massive black chimney. The threesome stayed out on the garden terrace, however, still preferring the sky as their roof. At twilight, they retired to their rooms, once reserved for only the noble. The rooms were warmly paneled, and fragrant with the scent of wood burning on the raised hearth of the massive stone fireplace. They beheld a wealth of graceful furniture such as carved chests. It was enchanting to the last of the fresh flowers in the antique containers and the old oil prints on the wall. The rosy glow of the lamp spread over the velvet chairs. There was a graveyard out back containing many Saxon gravestones. It had a sort of melancholy beauty. The west still glimmered with some streaks of day, and they all drank that evening sky from old pewter. Dinner was a smoked supper with bottles of mulled port and a hum of pleasant voices. The scent of rare tobacco, which hadn't even been discovered by the world yet, filled the room. A cheerful glow descended as a good time was had by all of the residents of the inn. Well, in the first room of the inn resided an aging lady torn apart by all of the violence of the wars. Furthermore, she could no longer understand the younger generation, although she came to tolerate them. She may have been young once herself. She was of Finnish descent and called herself Doriana.
Yes, they call me Doriana. I've seen much in my time, and though the world has changed, some things remain the same.
First, across and down the hall was a young flaxen-haired Saxon girl, a very lively young light who brought joy to all who beheld her. It was she who brought the inn people together with adventure, showing them all how to be young again in spirit.
Life is but a fleeting moment. Let's make it a joyful one, shall we?
It was said that a man could fall in love with her after a mere gaze. Indeed, many men sought out potions from magicians to lessen their enchantment, so that they could get about their daily business. She was but a temporary resident of the inn, and would leave in the dead of winter, never to be seen again upon the earth. She came to be known only as the Flaxen Saxon.
Perhaps I am an angel of life itself, living in a perpetual sunrise of joy that is ever moving to mortals.
Perhaps she was an angel of life itself, living in a perpetual sunrise of joy that was ever moving to mortals. Now and then an aged wise man was seen entering, then leaving the room of the Flaxen Saxon. He was as old as she was young. He was the senior citizen of the inn, and all looked to him for advice on many diverse matters.
Wisdom is not bound by age, but by the experiences we gather.
He never gave his age, but was thought to have been born long before the Dark Ages began. At dinner, he would always perform the magic trick of producing wine from thin air. Then, during dinner, he would make the wine disappear. They simply called him the Old Man.
The simple joys of life, like a good glass of wine, can sometimes be the most magical of all.
Next to Doriana's room resided the last remnant of the devil come to earth, evil incarnate, but ever suffering from a reduction of cursing power since the Grail was located. From time to time he even appeared somewhat normal, but to eliminate all evil from the world would be a farce, because without evil, good would have no contrast and could not very well exist either. Rooming with the devil was a silent scribe. On the right hand of the devil was a man of many tales. There was never a moment when he was not retelling a previously told tale or two. The tales struck fear into the ears of all within earshot, but it soon faded into a background noise. Next to the old wise man was a little old gnome of undetermined gender who was given the right to bear arms by the king long ago. He doubled as the innkeeper and attempted many brave deeds on behalf of the residents. Then, suddenly, one day he was gone into the ground. Across from the gnome lived a giant of a man, at least 8 feet tall, so very straight and very narrow, stalwart, lithe, and growing taller by the minute. He was the keeper of the gnome, a full-time job until the gnome went home. Little was seen of the giant. He kept to his room most of the time because he hated to hear noise. Across the hall from the old man and the Flaxen Saxon, and between the devil and the giant, there resided a writer-scholar named Geoffrey, one who wished to record the stories of the times.
And so it was I who recorded some of the tales of Percival and of many others. I wrote of knights and chivalry and of adventures and of country inns where there resided a writer who wished to record the stories of the times.
He wrote best under the influence of the many great wines bequeathed by the old wise man.
So, when I wasn't writing, I was to be found in the inn's great dining hall, washing down my wine with some food.
The little time that he had left was spent being the shadow of those who were enchanted, such as Percival. But this moonlight shadow job could be attended to but rarely, so, many times, the enchanted had no shadows at all. We almost forgot someone, a soldier of misfortune, a woman child just beginning to feel her way through the world. One who was sometimes very likable, sometimes not so, but ever entertaining. She was to become the first woman knight and achieve great honor in the years to come. So much for the residents, the rest were mostly transients. The next day, I believe it was the 1st of December, was clear. And Venus could even be seen, even in the daytime as it was coming close to Earth.
Venus seemed to be in the path of the early setting first quarter moon and was even brighter than that moon.
Sure enough, the time came when that moon gave birth to Venus after its eclipse, and they both set together, a wonder of wonders to Percival's eyes. No moonlight streaked through the window cracks that night, as Alexis slept with the man of her daydreams. A new acquaintance, as did Guinevere as well, having met a man. Percival, too, located damsels as he was now wont to do. In fact, the triumvirate saw little of each other during the first days at the inn, spreading out socially among the residents. But they were still loving each other from a distance. The morning brought the dragon's breath, sleet, and hailballs. All hearts sank as the first real impression of winter iced the last wisps of the summer wind.
Bring me a zephyr to float on, a river of sparkling diamonds seen through a rose-colored glass, a love up hot and rising on a summer's afternoon.
Then, without a whole lot of warning, the mist lifted, pierced by Orion's sword. Orion was now Merlin, perhaps. Well, who could blame Merlin? He had an idea that worked time and time again. Nursemaid to kings, link to the netherworld, guider of life, dragon caller, force user, legend creator, and magician. Oh, Beelzebub, I think you have lost your son Merlin from your clutches forever. It seems that his good side has become dominant. But then, the old Beezler himself attempted a feeble comeback in the next section.